If anybody's on there right now, could you let me know if you hear me? Thank you. Hi, Lirio. Can you hear me? Thanks, Carol. Wonderful. We'll start in about 3 minutes. Let some people get online here. Thank you. Thanks for joining me today. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. Hi, Kathy. Nice to see you're on. Kathy at Golden is just joined in, and she's going to help me answer some questions and point you to some good links from QoR Watercolors and Golden Artist Colors. So this live stream will be it'll be between 45 minutes and an hour. Probably the last 15 minutes will be Q&A. So be sure and type in your comments down in the comment box. So let's get started. It's 1 o'clock straight up. I don't want to keep you waiting, those of you that signed in on time. My name is Nancy Seiler. I'm a golden working artist with Golden Artist Colors up in New Berlin, New York. I live in Missoula, Montana. And I also am a working artist in San Diego. So that is my area where I go down and do lecture demos down in San Diego area and then also in Montana. I'm up in Montana right now and have been really enjoying the outdoors during this time. So I'm really grateful to be living here right now. So today I thought I would talk to you about some simple ways that you can draw and paint leaves. This is World Watercolor Month. July is World Watercolor Month with Doodle Wash, doodlewash.com. And I'll show you this here. Here's my name and my website. And then this is World Watercolor Month. So if you want to share your watercolors or water media paintings this month in July, you can go to Instagram and do a hashtag World Watercolor Month. If you'd like to find out more about it, doodlewash.com. That website has more information. This month is also a charitable event to support arts education via the Dreaming Zebra Foundation, which provides art materials and art education. So if you want to get involved in that a little bit more for kids, this is for kids, you can head on over to doodlewash.com and find out a little bit more about that. So the prompt for this month, July, was the word fall. So if you need prompts for your work, they have prompts on there too for the whole month. So fall, it's not fall right now, it's summer. It's high summer here in Montana. And but I'm going to show you how to play around with drawing some plants, some leaves, and how to approach drawing leaves pretty simply using skeletal structure of the leaf, and then how to paint wet into wet with QoR watercolors. I'm just using 3 pigments today. I'm using cadmium yellow. Let's see here. Let's do this a different way. I'm using cadmium yellow medium and cadmium red medium. These are my 3 primary colors I'm going to be using. And the last one is ultramarine blue. And these are all mineral colors, meaning they are inorganic. They are in the earth. They're from the earth. So they're going to be more, a little bit duller. And when you look at them under a magnifying glass, the pigments, they look like chunks of dirt or gravel, and that's because they're from the earth. There are also modern watercolors that are organic watercolors that are made through organic chemistry. And those would be like your quinacridone magenta, your phthalo blue, or your benzimidazoline yellow. Those would be 3 modern colors. Let me show you the difference. This is a color wheel using ultramarine blue, cadmium red, and cadmium yellow, cadmium red medium, cadmium yellow medium. You can see that the colors, especially in the purples, are kind of dull, and that's because of the mineral colors and being from the earth. Modern colors, on the other hand, are very bright and transparent, and they look like pieces of stained glass under a magnifying glass. So they're going to be brighter and transparent, and you can see here the purples are very different from the mineral. So if you find that you're getting muddier colors, you may want to think about these modern colors. And I get a lot of questions as to what is a modern color? How can you tell? Well, they're really hard to pronounce. As you can see, benzimidazoline and quinacridone, the phthalo starting with a PH. That's like a little trick to tell you that. But we're going to be focusing on these today, and we're going to keep it simple. Just using the ultramarine blue, cadmium red medium, and cadmium yellow medium. So I hope you're excited to listen to my tips on drawing plants. My background is actually, I'm a classical botanical illustrator. I was trained at the Denver Botanic Gardens, over 16 classes back in 2000 to 2003, pretty much. And then I started teaching in 2003, classical botanical illustration. And that evolved into nature journaling, which I teach quite a bit of. Let me show you a couple nature journal pages here. Here's a leaf that I'm basing this live stream off of. It's just a simple maple leaf in my journal. A couple other journal pages where you can do some real quick sketches. This was a penstemon in Tahona Chol in Arizona. This is down in Borrego Springs, California. I teach down in this area as well. So this is in the desert from a couple years ago. And let's see. And this one is just a still life of some tulips. But these are all done with QoR watercolors and in my journal there. So what I really like to do is go out and look at plants up close. This is just petals from an Astralmeria, which is a Peruvian lily, and just little studies with QoR watercolors using layers of color. So what I, sorry, find that maple leaf again. So I went out in the yard, and this is the same type of maple leaf I got off the tree in the front yard. This is a Norway maple leaf, and this is based on this leaf. So again, if you're joining me, my name is Nancy Seiler. I'm a golden working artist with Golden Artist Colors, and today we're talking about drawing and painting autumn leaves on different surfaces. So I'll be talking a lot about watercolor today, and also the acrylic surfaces that you can paint watercolor on, which many of you may have never thought about before. So let me check on your questions here. Yeah, just throw out some questions if you have anything. All right, so getting back to this. So the way I like to draw plants and the way I teach plants is to draw the skeletal structure. So what I'm talking about with skeletal structure, especially the reason I'm using this maple leaf, is because it's so clear on here. The stem comes up. Remember, all plants grow out of the ground. So that energy, your line for drawing, should go right up the stem and go right to the tip of the leaf. And I'm looking at the underside of this leaf because I can see the veins, the main veins, a lot easier. In the drawing, you can see that there's one main vein here, the stem that goes right up to the tip. And then from this point in the center here, you can see very clearly where all of the main veins come out of, a little bit clearer than on the other side. But each of these veins come right out of this point. So whenever I start drawing a plant, I always look at the skeletal structure of the plant first. Now this works for all kinds of different plants. Let me just show you what I mean. So I pulled out some leaves from my garden yesterday. This is a lupin. Might be better if I show you this way. So again, all these veins from the stem comes right up into the middle here. And then when I would start drawing, I would draw a line, a center line right here, and out to each tip of each leaf. So sometimes it helps to draw a circle first, and then place dots along the diameter of the circle for each leaflet. And then draw the center line out to that dot. So breaking something down and looking at larger shapes and skeletal structure will really help you draw plants easily. And then after I draw the center line of each vein, then I would flesh it in on each side. Now today, where I am going to stick with flatter plants, when you get into curving leaves like this, that gets a little more tricky, but you still follow that same vein and draw the middle and then each side. This also works for petals, any sort of petal on a plant. Draw the center of it, even if there isn't a main vein, just draw a light line and then flesh in each side of the petal, drawing each side, and pretty soon this will come a lot easier to you. A couple other plants I pulled out. This is a mountain ash. This turns a beautiful orange color in the fall. And again, main stem, and then tick off each spot along the stem where these petals, these leaflets connect and come out. They're opposite, so they come out of the same point. And then again, draw the same center line, the same vein. Again, you might be able to see it better on the back side. Make a dot on your paper and then connect the dots from this dot along the main, this dot along the main stem to the tip. Draw each line and then flesh it in. You can see the margin of this leaf is more jagged. You can still sketch it in with a pencil and then go back in with a pen and make those jagged margin edges. Here's one more. This is a sumac. Again, a lot more complicated, but if you break it down, again, this has a center stem, and then each leaflet, you can see up here, has other leaflets. I'm not a botanist, so I don't know the names of all these. I don't never remember it. But again, look at each center line, center vein. Again, you can see it better on the back. And you can draw the center vein and then the margin of the leaf. So that's a little overview of just any kind of leaf that you can draw in that way. Let me show you a few examples. Any questions so far? Let's see. Oh, thanks, Willa. It really helps to practice this. And again, this session is, I tend to teach a lot of people that have never used watercolor or never drawn plants. I tend to draw a lot of landscape and plants and lots of nature. I do draw some birds. I really like bugs. I like anything that's symmetrical, like butterflies or bugs. A lot of plants, obviously. I just love plants. But this is a way where you can get started with drawing what's in your yard or in your area, and then drop in some watercolor into it and really have a lot of fun. So this will get you going with watercolor if you haven't used it before. And if you have, it's just a really fun, relaxing thing to do if you're comfortable with watercolor. So the first thing I do is I draw the leaf. And now I've drawn this, I'm sorry, I got to switch the camera back here. I've drawn this on tracing paper. When I teach my students how to get started with drawing, I tend to say, look at the leaf, get some scratch paper out, and just sketch. Don't worry about all the skeletal structure I've been talking about first, but just start drawing and loosen up. Anytime you start doing something new, you've got to warm up. So draw from your elbow, like this is how we shake hands these days, with our elbow. Draw with your elbow, draw with your shoulder. Don't draw with your hand so much to get started like this, or your wrist, because that's really makes you not be able to loosen up. So think about drawing with your elbow. Think about your arm on a fulcrum and just sketch and get started that way. And then as you progress, another thing you can do is, I tell people, don't look at your paper so much. Just look at the object you're trying to draw, and then let your eye follow this outer edge and do a blind contour line drawing, just following that outer edge with a pencil or a pen. And don't worry about what's on your paper. Look at the object. If you look at your paper, there's no information on your paper, so your drawing is not going to, it's not going to help to look at your paper and draw through what's in your mind. What you really need to do is look at your object and let your hand just follow your eye, what your eye sees. So when I get to the point of feeling like I'm a little bit more comfortable with the drawing, I start, I do a tracing of it. So I may have this drawing already on paper. Here I have it on paper. Let's do this first. So I've sketched this out in pencil, and it's really hard to see, so I'm going to actually go over it with a pen based on how I would normally draw these leaves. Now I'm using a fine liner graphics pen. It's a 0.4. I usually use in my journals a .01, an .1, we used to say. So again, you can see this. I'm using a thicker line here so you can see, but I'm using the stem, and what I usually do is draw around the sketch first, and I use dots sometimes, but I'm doing the main veins. If if you use a broken line, your eye will fill it in automatically. Let's see, center veins. So this is how I would start this drawing. And you can see how I'm turning the paper because my elbow is kind of a fulcrum, so it's going to make it easier to draw these veins. And then the last one. Now, so this is the main vein structure. This is how it starts. So you can see that it's like a palm. It's like 5 veins coming off the center here. So that's how I would start. And then I would look at each section. This leaf I traced is a little bit different than this one, but it's both maple leaves. And I would look at the edge and head toward this vein right here is right here. And I would just flesh it in. And as you start going around, you'll have your leaf shape. And this can work again on any leaf. So let me look at these questions as I draw here. Let's see. Hey, Kevin, our education director from Golden Artist Colors is on here. All right, so I'm just going to fill this in. And I'm varying my line. You can, if you like to use a crow quill pen where you can push and more ink comes out and then let up so you get a thick, thin line, that's really fun too. Or, like I said, I just vary my line as I draw and it becomes a little bit more interesting. So I'm just going to fill this in. You can see how I'm just fleshing it in when I'm going around the veins. Pushing and light and dark. I had an instructor one time tell me, Marjorie Liggett from Denver Botanic Gardens, one of my wonderful instructors I had there, and she said, think about being on a roller coaster and thinking about how that line works. So maybe you're real light and then you go down a hill and then you push and it gets thicker and then lighter. And so that gives your line a lot of character. So you can see how going thick and thin, pushing and letting up makes your drawing a little bit more interesting. And you'll notice that on the leaf, there's a lot more veins happening off of those main veins. In this exercise, I'm not going to really get into drawing all those veins, but if you wanted to draw some of those, you could I'll just do a little bit here, draw some dots. Not everything has to be solid line in your sketches, so just vary it a little bit, like so. So let's see if there's any questions on drawing, anything here. Again, I'm Nancy Seiler. I'm a Golden working artist with Golden Artist Colors, and I also teach QoR Watercolors for Golden and in my own workshops. So again, we are this session is drawing and painting autumn leaves on different surfaces, and shortly I'll show you some of those surfaces and then show you a demo on painting wet into wet. So let me know if you have any questions as we go along. I'm going to pop back to my desk. All right, so once I have this drawn, then I can put a piece of tracing paper over it. And what I did on this one is I used my Micron 0.1 pen. I really like this. Now it looks thicker, this line looks thicker because what I've done is on the back of the tracing paper, I've taken a B, a softer pencil. So graphite pencils come in different softness and hardnesses. I guess that's a word. So I've got a B here, which is kind of a soft lead, and then also a 3H, which I'm going to use, show you how I use to trace that. So on the back of this tracing paper, this is the easiest way to do it. if you have a nice bright window in your house, you can actually put your tracing paper on your window, if this is a window, and then place your paper over it and then trace through your window. Or a light box. I used to have a light box, or I actually still do. It's great for drawing from your sketches. But I put graphite on the back of this, just using the side of my pencil, like this. And I just added graphite wherever I had lines. And then, so with my B pencil. And then when I go to trace onto another surface, I'll just show you right up here off of this. I can use my 3H pencil, which is a harder lead, and press onto this paper. Don't press too hard because you don't want dents in your paper, but you can see how easily you can transfer that graphite. See that right in there? So that's what I did for this. And then after you ink it, if that's what you decide to do, let your ink dry and then take a kneaded eraser and just lift up your pencil lines like so. And then you're ready to go with your watercolor. Okay, so what I've done in my samples, I'm going to show you. Sorry, let's see here. I'll post this on my blog. My blog is at nancyseiler.com. But this is a step-by-step handout on drawing and painting a maple leaf, just like what I'm showing you. So here's the actual leaf. This is the drawing. When I add the watercolor, start adding watercolor, I'll do a wash in the color, the background color of the leaf, the tone of the leaf. This is a Oregon grape leaf. This was out in my yard today, and these start to turn color early sometimes, or this could be even from last year. But you can see the beautiful undertone of green here. And so in this case, after I would draw this on paper, again, following that main stem, and then each leaflet, and then fleshing it in, I would do a green, like a light green wash, like a green-yellow wash using ultramarine and yellow. Let's just do that. I just mixed up some green. This is ultramarine and yellow. And I like putting both colors into one well sometimes, because this way I can get a lot of different tones of green. So this is like a light yellow green. I can add a little bit more blue easily, grab from each side. And this way I'm not washing my brush off between each color like I would on these three. I would rinse my brush each time. Sometimes if you're doing green and you need a lot of different greens, you know, it's very easy to just have this already in the well, and then you can just add yellow a little bit or a lot. QoR watercolors are very easy to, they're very resoluble. Meaning if they're dry in your palette, you can just add a little water and you get nice vibrant colors. QoR is different than any other watercolor on the market in that the binder is called Aquazol. And Aquazol is a completely clear binder. It doesn't yellow or mold or crack. It's very flexible. And it's been used in art conservation and museums for, I think, about 30 years, 40 years. Maybe Kathy could clarify that for me. But it's been used to fill in paintings, because if in conservation, if a better fix comes along in 50 years, it can be removed. It's removable, and those paintings can be repaired with something better that may come along. But right now, Aquazol is used. And Mark Golden, one of the owners of Golden Artist Colors, thought, well, we should do a watercolor with this because it's so great for art conservation. And so that's how QoR watercolors were developed and manufactured, was using Aquazol. All the pigments in different mediums, such as acrylic, oil, and watercolor, are the same. So cadmium red medium, cadmium yellow medium, and ultramarine blue, which is what I'm using today, would be the same pigment in acrylic or oil, watercolor, pastel, all the same pigments. The only difference is the binder that holds that pigment onto the page. So watercolors dry by evaporation. The water evaporates and that pigment sets on your page and binds onto your page with the Aquazol, the binder. A lot of other watercolors are made with gum arabic or honey. Some of them are made with honey as a binder. So you need something to have that pigment stick to your paper. So anyway, that's a little test on telling you a little bit about those pigments. So I'll post this on my blog. This is a step-by-step of doing a maple leaf in watercolor, how I do it. So I'll get that posted. So let's look at some different samples on different surfaces. Let's see. It's always never enough desk area here. So this is what I've done in here. This is watercolor paper, Fabriano watercolor paper. Let me take a look at these questions while I'm shifting here. Okay. Yeah, all right, so we're good. No questions so far that I can see. You can write them in there again if I've missed them, please. So what I've done here is I've traced that leaf that I showed you with tracing paper. I've traced this leaf onto a lot of different surfaces that I'm going to talk about. So this one was done before, and you can see that there's a white line here in between each section for showing those veins. And a lot of times I like to paint areas of wet and then just drop the paint into it. So let me show you how I do that. This is one I started earlier today, and I'm just playing around with color. Like, again, I'm using a green leaf, but I'm just kind of using my imagination for color, using the ultramarine blue, the cadmium red, and the cadmium yellow, both mediums. Cadmium red medium, cadmium yellow medium. So how I do this is have a brush here. I really like using a number 8 round for a lot of my journaling pieces and work like this, even when I'm trying to fill in a larger area, because this brush holds quite a bit of water in the belly. This is a real nice brush by Silver Brush Company, and it's called a Silver Silk 88 number 8 round. And this is a beautiful brush that I really like because it's got a great spring to it. You can see that spring. It's got a nice point, so I can use it not only on the side to do washes, but I can hold it upright like this and use the tip and get a nice, let me show you. So this would be a side for washes, like that. Or I could use the tip and get a very fine line. You can see that. So I just really like a number 8 round for journaling. All right, so how do I do this? The reason I have every other section colored is because I wanted to create a dam, what I call a dam, where when you wet the paper, you're just wetting the area where you want to put the paint. So I'm actually putting a layer of water in here right now, just clear water, and I'm following the edge of that section of that leaf. and I'm adding water to that, trying to keep it in that area. Okay, now the fun begins. All right, I'm just going to put a little bit more water in there because I'm going to do all 3 sections at once because it's fun. That's why. So I'm just painting over that first layer. I did this undertone in yellow so you could really see it on the screen. You know, having the white paper on Facebook Live, you just really can't, it doesn't focus, and, you know, one of those technical issues. So I went ahead and put in yellow in the background of the whole leaf. I didn't even do it in sections. I just painted the whole thing. Now everything's good and wet. Now this is where the fun begins. So I'm going to go into my palette, grab some cadmium red medium, and then just drop it on here. And you can see how it moves. Really fun. And this is a great way to just test out your colors, your pigments that you may have sitting around the house that you haven't used in a while. Just do some leaves like this. I'm going to do all 3 of these at once. I'm just dropping cadmium red in here. It's good and wet. The paper's good and wet. You want to use some good watercolor paper. This is, again, Fabriano, I think 140 pound. And I'm just dropping some red paint in here, cadmium red. You can see I'm just touching it and letting it move. I'm rinsing my brush. You can really see how this is moving over here. Now I want to add some ultramarine blue down here in the bottom. And it looks real bright going on, but it'll dry a little bit not as bright. Now I'm going to add a little yellow, and just here and there, just to kind of let it move and blend. And you'll see when I add yellow to the blue, it turns green. Secondary color there, real easy. And when I add it to the red, it turns orange, looks orange. So if you get too much water on your paper, you can just grab a little piece of paper towel and lay it on your paper and lift up some of that water. So you can see how easy that was and how those colors just move. And as long as it's wet, like I feel like I need a little bit more blue up here, I can just add a little blue up there and it'll continue to move as it dries. Okay, any questions on that? I did do the whole leaf space, the undercolor of yellow, yes, in this case. So it's a little different than this one. This one I'm just using 2 colors. I'm using, I believe, a cadmium yellow and a cadmium red in this, and then a little bit of blue down in here. This one is the 3 colors from the palette. And again, you can use any 3 colors to do this exercise, or any color. It's really fun. So I'm going to put these aside to dry, or that one aside to dry. And I'm going to show you some other surfaces that I really like. You know, I'll show you this. I'll pop back on the other camera and just show you this. I don't know how well this will turn out. This is something that I use in my lecture demos, and this is on plexiglass. And these are acrylic-based grounds, pastes, and textural gels. So a lot of these, all of these, can be used under watercolor or oil if you're an oil painter. So think about these acrylic gels, pastes, and grits, textural gels, to use under your paintings, whether they be watercolor, acrylic, or oil. You can put oil over acrylic, but you can't put acrylic over oil. All right, so let's see what these are. This is a little board I made up. Okay, so this is a birch panel, 1/8 inch birch. I go over to a building supply place here in Missoula, and I get a big sheet of this and I cut it down. This is used for the back of my framed pieces, but this is birch, and I get a little bit thicker for the part I paint on. But I use these birch panels to paint on a lot. And again, they can be used for watercolor, acrylic, or oil. Well, how is that done? How do you do watercolor on a birch panel? Well, first of all, for any painting, you need to prep these birch panels with 2 coats of gloss medium. And what that does, here's gloss medium. This is a golden medium, acrylic medium, and it dries. It's a thin medium. I'll just put it up here in the corner so you can see how thin that is. And you always want to, don't use your watercolor brushes with acrylic grounds, but you can see how thin that is. You want to use an acrylic brush with your acrylic grounds. All right, so gosh, time flies. So anyway, I want to show you some of these different grounds. So the first one is Absorbent Ground. So you can see the difference. If I compare this with the watercolor paper, you can see the difference in how that watercolor moves on Absorbent Ground. What was the quinacridone color you said in place of the cadmium yellow? That would be benzimidazoline yellow. And maybe someone can put a link up for that because it's hard to remember how to say or write. Someone had a question here about that. Okay, so Absorbent Ground. I'm probably not going to show you each texture on this because of time, but I will show you the jar and explain it a little bit to you. This is Absorbent Ground. This is an acrylic ground. All of the grounds and surfaces I'm going to be talking about here are acrylic. So this is going to be watercolor on acrylic. All of these samples are done the same way. So Absorbent Ground is an opaque acrylic primer for water media. So you could put fluid acrylics on this, anything, like I mentioned. But it's very absorbent, so you can see how that paint really moved onto this ground. I brushed out with my brush just maybe 2 layers onto this cardboard. Okay, so it's feels kind of chalky, and you can add a little water to this Absorbent Ground to make it smoother. You can also get some fine sandpaper and sand it in between coats if you'd like to have it even smoother. So this is a golden ground, Absorbent Ground, and this is what it looks like with watercolor on it. Okay. Now, here is light molding paste. Again, this is 1 coat. You can see it's a little different, but on light molding paste. So this is very, very light in weight. It's hollow ceramic spheres that are in an acrylic polymer. It's opaque. It's very lightweight. It was manufactured because artists were putting a lot of texture on their canvases, and with the heavier molding paste, the canvases were tearing off the stretcher bars. So this light molding paste, you can do a giant painting and you can still lift it up because it's so lightweight. So, and you can also paint with watercolor on it. You can get a lot of texture with this too. While it's wet, you can carve into it with a palette knife while it's wet and create a surface that is very textured and paint watercolor over it. So again, the same way, you can see how it's not as bright, but it was painted the same way. You can add more layers of watercolor over this, and so that's a cool surface to use with watercolor. The next one I'm going to talk about is fiber paste. Okay, fiber paste is like handmade paper in a jar, and it is pretty opaque, semi-opaque. It's got synthetic fibers that look like cold press watercolor paper. I don't know if you can see that, but you can kind of see the texture of that paste in the background. And it looks like watercolor paper. And you can paint on it just like watercolor paper. What's so cool about these surfaces is that you can put these surfaces on a board like that birch panel I showed you, or plexiglass. That's coming up here in a second, or any kind of surface. And then if you want to display it, watercolor, you just varnish it with spray varnish. So to show any of these watercolors in a show, you would put down 2 coats of gloss varnish, letting them dry in between each coat onto the surface of your watercolor. You don't want to brush varnish onto watercolors because you will smear them. So make sure you use spray varnish. So 2 coats of gloss varnish, that will keep your colors bright, and then finish with 2 coats of satin varnish. And that will bring back that the paper feel, like just get rid of the gloss and have it look more like a piece of paper. So it's pretty cool. I do have a board back here to show you the difference here. This side is unprotected. This is straight watercolor, and this has 4 coats of the varnish on it. So you can see it doesn't alter your painting very much at all. So it's a great solution for painting on surfaces other than watercolor paper. All right, let's go on and look at these other surfaces. This is Crackle Paste. So when you look at Crackle Paste, you see cracks because here's our Crackle Paste. It's opaque, and if you put it on thick, with a palette knife, I always put these surfaces on with a palette knife, these thicker ones, and you don't need a fancy palette knife. You just need a $1 palette knife, real inexpensive. But you spread this on, and if you spread it on thick, you can see it's on pretty thick at the top and thin at the bottom. You're going to get thicker cracks at the top and thinner, finer cracks at the bottom. And then you can go in and paint with your watercolors. Here I've done kind of a fractile kind of look with it, but it's painted basically the same way as on watercolor paper. It really looks bright, doesn't it? All right, let's see. Now, this is super fun. This is Pastel Ground. Looks like this. And you can add a little water to this to make it thinner or thicker, but here is, you can see it's semi-transparent, but I painted on this side that has a little bit of friction, and then you can see when I flip it over, it's nice and bright. So again, this was painted the same way as this, and you can see the difference. Let's look at one more version of this. I got to tip this a little bit so you can see it. But this was painted on the back. This is Pastel Ground. And then I also went into it with colored pencil. So you can do some mixed media with your watercolor and colored pencil. Flip it over and you got a nice, protected surface is what I'm trying to say. All right, there's that. All right. Let's look at another one. This is Coarse molding paste. Again, an acrylic ground. This is a lot heavier than the light molding paste because it has a lot more texture in it. I think it's a volcanic rock or something like that. No, that's the pumice gel. I'm sorry. So coarse molding paste. Kind of heavy. So you can see though, it kind of looks like handmade paper on this plexiglass. It's opaque. You can't see through that. So, but it's a nice surface to paint on. And it gets a kind of absorbent and handmade paper look. So this may give you some ideas on using some of these surfaces. I want to show you this board just to show you some differences here. This is coarse molding paste, light molding paste, crackle paste, and fiber paste. So you can see the comparison of some of those differences. And again, this was carved into when the pastes were wet, left to dry, and then painted on top. You can paint watercolor. This is fluid acrylic, and oil on this, I believe on all of these. So just lots of options. Okay, one more. Let's see here. I want to show you one more here. Okay, the last one I want to show you is Duralar. Okay, so Duralar is like an acetate, and you want to get wet media film, 004 wet media film. And when you look at it, it's like acetate. It's very thin, and it looks like this when you paint on it. It's pretty cool. You can see that. Now I've done another one under here in a different color just to show you how you can layer the Duralar to get a different look. So again, that's painted right. This is painted on the back of these. So it's a little bit rougher from the paint on the back, and then look how bright that is. Isn't that cool? And then it's transparent. So not only are the watercolors transparent, but the acetate is transparent. Okay, so hopefully that gives you some good ideas to use with QoR. Let's see. All right. Wow, 11 minutes to go. Does anyone have any other questions? Let's see here. Do I use varnish on that pastel ground? Sure, you can. You can varnish your pastel ground watercolors. What is a surface for pastel? I'm not sure what you mean by that. If you could clarify that a little bit, Jyothi, that would be great. Oh, and yeah, I think Kathy is on here. We're currently offering dot cards to artists for free while supplies last. I do not have one of those in front of me right now, but you can take a look at those dot cards where you can try out the watercolors. Let's see. Any other questions? So I will post the step-by-step on my blog for drawing leaves. Does anyone have anything else they want to ask me? Oh, thanks, Maria. I'm glad you got something out of this session. One thing I just want to summarize is as a watercolor artist for many years, I didn't realize that I could paint on anything other than watercolor paper. And using these different grounds and surfaces by Golden gives you, if you try them out, you can get some great ideas going forward with different surfaces and different boards to paint on. Say you want to paint a big watercolor, but you want it on a stiff board. You can go get one of those cradled boards by Ampersand, or make your own and just treat it with 2 layers of gloss medium so you don't get surface-induced discoloration. I forgot to mention that. That's why you treat the birch, and if you paint on masonite or any kind of wood, you want to put 2 coats of gloss medium on it so that the resin or the dye from those woods doesn't migrate up through your painting and leave streaks, discolor your painting. So make sure you put 2 coats of gloss medium down, put your ground or surface down, and paint. Watercolor, again, watercolor, acrylic, oil. You can paint all of these mediums onto these acrylic grounds. So I think, let's see, I think that's about it. Again, if you have any questions, write them on here, and I'll get back to it, or Kathy will on here, Kathy Jennings at Golden. We'll get your questions answered, and I would say try these out. Just get a little jar and try out some of these samples and see what comes up. So, and be sure to share them on hashtag World Watercolor Month or on the QoR Instagram page. I think it's QoR Watercolors, pretty sure, or the Golden page on Instagram. We'd like to see what you do with this. So thanks again for joining me. I've really enjoyed talking to you today, and maybe I'll see you next month. All right. I see one more question. Could this be used on ceramic or stone? Yes. Kathy's answering that for you, Maria. So I think I'll sign off. I appreciate all your questions and comments. So, oh, sorry, Kathy. Have I painted on actual birch bark? I have not. Maybe Kathy Jines can answer that. Amy Shawley Paquette, if you want to look her up on the Golden Paints page under community. She's a working artist in Virginia, and she does a lot of really amazing work mimicking birch, but she would probably know that answer as well. And I think that's it. Thanks, everybody. 7 minutes to spare, so you can leave a little early. All right, maybe I'll see you next time. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.